When others are reborn as rich second-generation heirs, I was reborn owing 1 million. The moment I opened my eyes, my brain suddenly exploded. Ding! Daily catch system activated. The next second, the entire mudflat turned into a transparent map with the location, quality, and price of every mud crab clearly marked. Others rely on luck when foraging the sea. I directly opened my third eye. Just as I was picking them up until my hands were sore, the system suddenly popped up a red warning. An 8-gene king crab found ahead, worth enough to clear the debt, but it will run away in 30 minutes. I dropped the bucket and plunged into the mud that was up to my thighs. I was reborn. In my ears was my mother's tearful shout, and my nose was filled with the smell of medicinal oil and damp mold. Opening my eyes, I saw that face covered in wrinkles, full of anxiety. This is not a dream. I didn't die. Just a moment ago, I was lying in a dilapidated tile-roofed house that let in the wind everywhere, feeling my life being drained away bit by bit. At the age of 30, the fishing boat sank, and I still owed Qian Fuguei 1 million in usurious loans. To repay the debt, I worked like a beast day and night, and my body completely collapsed. My wife despised me for being poor, took the last bit of money from home, and ran off with another man. My father, trying to raise money for my medical treatment, fell and broke his leg while fishing in a heavy rain, leaving him with a chronic condition. My mother was blocked at the door and cursed by debt collectors, which made her so angry she fell ill. In the end, listening to my parents' suppressed coughs next door, I breathed my last. That despair and unwillingness were etched into my bones. I shouldn't have died so miserably poor. That was my last sentence in my previous life. Son, don't scare Mom. Say something. Mom grabbed my hand, tears streaming down. I sat up abruptly. This wasn't the haggard, emaciated mother before her death. Although worried, her face still had color. I looked around. The walls were pasted with yellowed newspapers, a water stain in the corner, and daylight could be seen through the gaps in the roof tiles. This was the old house. I owed debts at 26 and died at 30. Now, I was reborn. Where's Dad? I asked urgently. He's worrying at the door. Qian Fuguei sent word yesterday that he'll come for the money tomorrow, and if we can't pay, he'll tear down the house. I rushed out the door. In the yard, Dad was squatting on the threshold smoking a pipe, his face tanned by the sea breeze, full of worry. Half of the courtyard wall had collapsed, and broken fishing nets were piled in the corner. The old fishing boat that had been with him for over a decade had shattered into pieces a few days ago, leaving only a few broken planks. All the suffering started with the boat sinking. I clenched my fists. In my previous life, it was because Qian Fuguei came to press for debt tomorrow that I was desperate and signed that fatal repayment agreement, never to get back on my feet. This time, absolutely not. I remember clearly that in the next few years, which sea areas near Baisha village yielded top-quality seafood, large yellow croaker schools, wild sea cucumber nests, ambergris that could sell for a sky-high price. All of it is in my mind. Mom, Dad, don't worry about the money. Are you crazy? That's 1 million. Don't beg anyone. From today on, I'll repay the debt and stand tall. I grabbed a broken bucket and worn rubber gloves, turned around, and walked out. Qian Fuguei, just wait. In this life, I'll show you what a money printing machine looks like. Early the next morning, before dawn. Bang, bang, bang. The broken wooden door was pounded thunderously. Lin Dashin, get out here. Pay up. My mother was so startled that she almost dropped the porridge bowl. My father rushed out of the house. His face flushed red, but helpless. I stood in the yard, my eyes cold as ice. Here they come. I opened the door. 3 people at the door. The leader was a fat man in his 40s. With a fierce face and a pinky-thick gold chain around his neck, it was Qian Fuguei. Behind him were 2 punks with dyed yellow hair, smoking cigarettes, looking like they were asking for a beating. Yo, Master Lin. Got the money? 1 million, not a cent less. My mother stammered with a flattering smile. Boss Qian, give us a few more days, we'll definitely find a way. A few more days? Qian Fuguei pushed my mother aside. I'm being nice to you? If you don't pay today, I'll tear down the house. Don't touch my mom. I supported her and stared at Qian Fuguei. That look was like a shark in the deep sea targeting its prey. The punk beside him wanted to push me, but was frozen by that gaze. 3 days. My voice was calm. In 3 days, I'll pay the first installment. If I can't, tear down the house as you wish, and I'll change my surname if I frown. Qian Fuguei squinted at me. A poor wretch who doesn't even have a boat, conjuring up money in 3 days? Fine, I'll give you 3 days. But I'm warning you, if you can't come up with 100,000 in 3 days, the interest will double. He thought he was playing cat and mouse. He wasn't afraid I'd run. In Baisha village, finding a person was easier than finding a fish. Get lost. His face changed. but facing my murderous gaze. He chickened out and left cursing with his men. My mother's legs gave way and she sat on the ground. Son, where are we going to get 100,000 in 3 days? My father punched the mud floor, his eyes red. Trust me, from today on, no one can bully our family. I went back to the house and closed the door. It's a lie to say I wasn't panicked. Memories are memories, but if something goes wrong, this family is truly finished. Just as my mind was about to smoke from overthinking, a voice suddenly exploded in my head. Ding. Detected strong will to survive and desire for wealth, meeting binding conditions. Daily catch system activating. Activation successful. A light blue translucent panel appeared before my eyes. Host. Lin Hai. Level. Version 1.0. Abilities. Basic coordinate positioning. Refresh daily. Seafood resource quality rating. Current task. Turn the tide. Earn 100,000 yuan in 3 days. System. My heart leaped to my throat. Rebirth plus a system. God, you really went all out. Today's catch coordinates refreshed. East of Baisha village, mangrove area. Main catch, mud crabs. Quality, common to good. The map unfolded. And in the mangrove forest east of the village, a red dot was blinking continuously. Mangroves. Mud crabs. I remembered, in my previous life, someone did find mud crabs there. But that place had deep mud, treacherous paths, and snakes, so no one liked to go. And they had no idea there was a whole crab nest underneath. Now, the system had thrown the treasure map right in my face. I picked up the broken bucket and headed out. Son, where are you going in the dark? Foraging the sea, back by dawn. At the village entrance, I ran into Lu Dezue, the village gossip who loved to see others in trouble. He was squatting under a banyan tree smoking, and when he saw me come out, he shouted, Yo, Lin's boy, your family is in dire straits, and you still have the mind to forage the sea? Expecting crabs to come ashore and help you pay off your debt? A few other villagers laughed along. His boat is gone. What can he use to forage? Just that broken bucket? I didn't stop walking, didn't even bother to turn my head. People like him, a waste of saliva. The eastern mangrove forest was a wasteland in the village. All mud, sinking to your calves with every step, with tangled tree roots that could easily cut you. People who had gone before came back with meager catches, and over time, no one came anymore. But in my eyes, this was a gold mine. System navigation enabled, follow the arrow. A light blue arrow appeared, pointing straight into the depths of the mangroves. I stepped into the mud, the cold muddy water covering my ankles, following the arrow to avoid hidden pits, weaving through the roots for over 10 minutes. Arrived at target area. Scanning enabled. I gasped. On the mud flat before me, there were dense red dots, stacked on top of each other, covering almost every inch of soil. Each red dot was a mud crab. Mud crab, common quality, estimated 3 tails. Mud crab, good quality, estimated 6 tails. As my gaze swept over, I could clearly see the quality and weight of each one. This wasn't foraging the sea. This was picking up money with X-ray vision. I put on the worn gloves, locked onto the nearest good quality red dot, and reached into the mud. My fingers touched a hard shell, and I pulled hard. Splash! A large mud crab over half a gene was pulled out of the mud, its claws flailing, but I subdued it and threw it into the bucket. Clang! That sound was better than anything. Dig, grab, throw. In one smooth motion. In less than 10 minutes, the bottom of the bucket was covered with lively mud crabs. Just as I was about to continue, a dazzling golden light suddenly flashed into my sight. Not far ahead, in an inconspicuous mangrove root cave, a golden dot shone brightly, more dazzling than all the surrounding red dots combined. Detected top quality target. Species, rare mutant king green crab quality. Top grade estimated weight, over 8 gene. Value, extremely high. Once in a century. 8 gene king crab. A regular green crab weighing 1 gene is already impressive. What does 8 gene mean? If I take this to the market, forget 100,000. It might even clear my debts. My breath turned hot. My foot had already taken half a step toward the golden light, but I forced myself to stop. Steady. The king crab's cave was deep in the mangrove roots, where the mud was clearly deeper, pitch black with no bottom in sight. If I rushed in and got stuck in the mud, I wouldn't be able to pull my leg out. Forget catching the crab, I'd be risking my life. Big guy, you stay put for now. I'll be back in a bit. I turned around and started clearing the ordinary red dots nearby. Within 3 meters, there were 7 or 8 red dots. Most were ordinary and good, but one was noticeably brighter. I locked my sight on it. Green crab, quality, premium, estimated weight. 1 gene and 2 liang premium? All the ones I pulled out earlier were ordinary or good, but this one jumped a grade. I understood now. There are 4 quality grades: ordinary, good, premium, and top grade. Each grade is rarer than the last, and the price doubles with each jump. This 1 Jean Tuliang premium crab would sell for at least 200 at market. I moved to the cave entrance. The cave was in a tricky spot, wedged under the intersection of 2 thick mangrove roots. The entrance was only the size of a fist, the edges sealed with mud, leaving no trace on the surface. If not for the system marker, no one would give it a second look even after passing by 10 times. I tightened the torn glove on my right hand and thrust my entire arm into the muddy hole. The cold mud flowed over my wrist, spreading upward in a sticky mess. The cave walls were narrow, clamping my arm tightly. My fingers groped in the darkness for 2 or 3 seconds before hitting something hard. Here it comes. I spread my fingers and firmly gripped the edge of the crab shell. At that instant, 2 large pincers clamped down hard on my index finger. Hiss! Even through the torn glove, the force nearly snapped my finger. Trying to break my finger? I gritted my teeth, twisted my wrist, and slipped my fingers in from the side of the shell. Locking onto the widest part of the crab's body, I braced my waist and yanked outward with all my strength. Pop! A big lump of mud came out, along with a large crab, dark blue-black, all over. The shell was over 10 centimeters wide, bigger than my entire palm. Its 2 pincers were terrifyingly thick, opening and closing with a clicking sound. I flipped it over to check the belly. The carapace was bulging roundly, impossible to press down. Quality assessment: premium green crab. Actual weight: 1 Jean and 3 Liang. Row fullness: 92%. Market reference price: 180 to 250 Hua Yuan. 1 Jean and 3 Liang. That's even more than estimated by 1 Liang. 92% row. If I steamed this, the moment I lifted the lid, the whole kitchen would be golden. In a few moves, I subdued this hot-tempered crab and tossed it into the bucket. Clang! The crabs already in the bucket scattered in chaos, only to be swatted back by the newcomer's pincer. It settled at the bottom, raising both giant pincers high, with an attitude that said, "Nobody move. All right, you're the boss." This one alone is over 200, plus the ones in the bucket. That's nearly 2,000 in hand, but still far from 100,000. No rush, there's plenty more ahead. I kept clearing red dots, grabbing whatever I saw. Good quality, 7 Liang, grab. Ordinary, for Liang, take it 2. The whole routine was incredibly fast, from spotting to bucket, in under 10 seconds. This wasn't beachcombing, it was an assembly line. Come on, line up, Boss Lin is buying everything today. After another 5 or 6 meters, another bright red dot appeared. Green crab, quality, premium, estimated weight: 1 Jean and 1 Liang. Another premium. I crouched down and shoved my arm in as deep as I could, my shoulder nearly touching the mud. My fingers touched a big one at the bottom of the cave. The curve of its shell was absurdly wide. Come out. I locked onto the crab's body and pulled, but the big guy's 2 large pincers clung to the cave wall, fighting me. Not giving up, huh? I changed my angle, reached in from under the shell, used a clever twist, and leaned back with my whole body. Pop! The big crab came out with mud and shell, and once out, it went wild, waving its pincers frantically. Stop struggling, you're destined to be my catch. I subdued it quickly and tossed it into the bucket. The bucket was already stacked with over a dozen crabs. The smallest ones at the bottom were blowing bubbles from the pressure. I straightened up and wiped my sweat. The eastern sky was glowing orange. The sun was about to rise. In the distance, the sound of waves pushing against the shore came faintly. I looked down and calculated. 23 crabs, 2 premium worth 4 to 500, 7 or 8 good, and a dozen ordinary. Total weight 12 or 13 Jean. Wholesale would net at least 3,000. Retail could hit 4 to 5,000. 4 to 5,000 is still far from 100,000. But I haven't pulled out the biggest one yet. I cast my gaze 20 meters ahead. The golden light was still there, brighter than before, flickering at a noticeably faster pace. Warning: top grade target activity frequency abnormally high. Current status: alert, attempting to relocate nest. Estimated relocation window: approximately 30 minutes. 30 minutes? This big guy is trying to escape? Time is running out. I stood up from beside the bucket, which was now packed full with 23 crabs. The rim piled high, the topmost crabs clinging to the edge with their pincers, ready to escape at any moment. I tore off a few strands of seaweed to tie a lid over the bucket and placed it on a dry spot nearby. From here to the Goldenda, there was a stretch of knee-deep mudflat in between, flanked by dense mangrove roots. Walking fast risked getting stuck. Walking slow risked being too late. I couldn't worry about that anymore. Lin Hai set the bucket full of crabs next to a thick mangrove trunk, memorized the spot, then turned and charged toward the golden dot. Every step in the mud required effort to pull out, making a sucking sound, but his speed didn't drop. 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters. The golden light grew brighter and closer. 3 meters. Lin Hai stopped. Right in front of him, the roots of an old mangrove formed a huge cave. The entrance was at least the size of 2 fists. The edges of the mud churned up, clearly the traces of large creature activity. On the system panel, the golden dot was fixed right in the center of this cave. Top grade target confirmed. Species, rare mutant king green crab quality. Top grade estimated weight, over 8 gene. Current depth, approximately 60 centimeters at cave bottom. Special note. This crab is far larger than normal, with extremely strong pincer grip. Bare-handed capture requires extra caution. Lin Hai crouched in front of the cave, staring at the dark, gaping hole. An 8-gene king crab. The first big catch of his life. Right down there, 60 centimeters deep. Don't run, buddy. This cave is your final home. He tightened both gloves, flexed his fingers, and curled the corners of his mouth. Then, he lay down on the muddy ground and thrust his entire right arm into the pitch-black cave. The mud submerged half his shoulder. His fingers groped deeper. 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters. Nothing. Deeper. 40 centimeters, 50 centimeters. His fingertips touched something. No, not something, a wall. A hard, cold, slightly curved wall. That was a crab shell. An entire giant crab shell. He spread all 5 fingers, but couldn't reach the edge of the shell. Good heavens, how big is this thing? Lin Hai's breath quickened. The moment his fingers hooked onto the edge of the shell, a dull crack sounded from the bottom of the cave. That was the sound of crab pincers closing. And the force of that sound was on a completely different level from the previous green crabs. The entire cave wall vibrated with it. Lin Hai's hand was pushed back by a brute force, and a 2-centimeter-long tear appeared on his glove. What a beast! He pulled his hand out, and saw that the glove had been ripped by the crab's pincer in one clamp. If he hadn't been wearing gloves, that would have drawn blood at least. Quite the temper. Lin Hai shook the mud off his hand, looked up at the cave entrance, and his excitement only grew, not diminished. The fiercer, the better. The fiercer, the more valuable. He tore off the torn glove. It couldn't withstand the king crab's pincer and would only get in the way. Come on, one more time. This time we go barehanded. He thrust his arm into the cave a second time. This time, he didn't rush to grab the shell. Instead, he slowly felt along the cave wall, figuring out the king crab's orientation and posture. The crab king faced the cave entrance, its 2 large pincers blocking the front, its body lying sideways at the bottom, and its hind legs firmly gripping the mud walls on both sides. A standard defensive posture. This creature wasn't brainless. You're guarding the front door with both pincers, right? Lin Hai muttered to himself. Then I won't come from the front. He pulled his arm out, moved to the side of the cave entrance, and scraped away a layer of mud, revealing a narrow crack in the cave wall. System. Does this crack lead to the bottom of the cave? Scanning. The crevice connects to the flank of the cave bottom, allowing access to the rear of the target crab's shell. Enough. Lin Hai reached his left hand into the side crevice, his fingers probing down the slippery mud wall. He touched it. The back of the crab shell, the area unprotected by the pincers. He spread his 5 fingers and firmly gripped the rear edge of the crab's carapace. At the same time, his right hand reached in from the front entrance, and in the gap when the crab king raised its pincers to strike, he shot through between the 2 large claws and grabbed the front edge of the carapace. Both hands, one front and one back, locked the entire shell of the crab king. Come out now. Lin Hai gritted his teeth, exerting force from his waist and legs simultaneously, pulling backward with all his might. A dull popping sound came from the cave, the crab king's hind legs frantically digging into the mud, but Lin Hai's strength was greater. Bang! A huge lump of mud shot out of the cave entrance, splattering mud all over Lin Hai's face and body. He didn't bother to wipe it off, his hands firmly gripping the thing in his arms as he fell backward onto the muddy ground. When he looked down to see what he was holding, his mouth fell wide open. Oh my God! Lin Hai held the crab in his arms, speechless for a long time. Big. Too big. The width of the carapace exceeded 25 centimeters, much wider than an adult man's face. It was a deep cyan color, the shell surface with a glossy sheen, a natural majesty that mud couldn't cover. The 2 pincers were even more outrageous, each the size of an adult's fist, with serrated patterns on the tips, clicking as they opened and closed. Just hearing it was painful. After being dragged out of the cave, the crab king didn't calm down. Instead, it became more irritable, its 8 legs flailing in the air, its 2 large pincers sweeping left and right. Relying on his experience from 2 lifetimes of beachcombing, Lin Hai used one hand to firmly grip the rear edge of the carapace and the other to press down on the crab's body from the back, flipping it over belly up. The moment the Crab King turned over, he saw the bulging carapace. It wasn't just bulging, it was bursting. The roe and paste inside had pushed the shell outward, golden crab paste faintly showing through the shell seams. How fatty is this? Lin Hai swallowed hard, and the system panel promptly displayed the appraisal result. Top grade appraisal complete. Species, rare mutant green crab king. Quality, top grade, highest rating. Actual weight, 8 gene 4 liang. Crab paste fullness, 98%. Market reference price. Such crab kings are extremely rare. No standard market pricing available. Recommended for auction or high-end restaurant channels. Estimated transaction price 8,000 to 15,000 Hua Yuan. 8,000 to 15,000? Lin Hai's eyes went wide. One crab, worth 2 months of my previous life's income? He looked down at the struggling creature in his arms and couldn't help laughing. Buddy, do you know how much you're worth? Every ounce of your body is made of gold. The Crab King didn't appreciate it, snapping a pincer that nearly caught his chin. Oh, still want to resist? All right, let's take you home. Lin Hai used the seaweed he had torn off to tie up both large pincers and all 8 legs of the Crab King securely, then stood up holding it. The weight of 8 gene 4 liang in his arms. Heavy and solid. A feeling of reassurance that traveled from his arms to the bottom of his heart. Let's go. First get the bucket. He carried the Crab King back the way he came, found the mangrove tree where he had left the bucket, and the crab bucket was still there. The Crab King was too big to fit into the bucket, so Lin Hai simply carried the bucket in one hand and the crab in the other, starting to walk out of the mud flat. The sun had already risen. Golden morning light shone on the water of the mangroves, illuminating the entire mud flat. The mud exposed at low tide was slowly being swallowed by the returning seawater. Lin Hai waded through ankle-deep water, walking unsteadily out of the mangroves. Just as he stepped out of the edge of the mangroves, he heard an old voice from the path ahead. Who's there? Making such a racket in the mangroves so early in the morning? Lin Hai looked up and saw a tall, thin old man standing on the path, wearing a faded short-sleeved shirt, his pant legs rolled up to his knees, and a pair of worn sandals on his feet. It was old man Li Jianxing, the most experienced fisherman in Baisha village, who had been beachcombing for over 40 years, respected by the whole village for his sharp eyes and experience. Old man Li was carrying a small bamboo basket, apparently also out early to pick up some seafood. He squinted at Lin Hai approaching, first recognizing the person, then his gaze fell on the large crab tied up in Lin Hai's arms. In that instant, old man Li's footsteps froze on the ground. Lin's boy? His voice changed pitch, his eyes wide as brass bells. What are you holding in your arms? Uncle Li, good morning. Lin Hai grinned at him. A green crab, just dug out from the mangroves. A green crab? Old man Li nearly dropped his bamboo basket, hurrying over in 3 steps. Staring at the Crab King in Lin Hai's arms for a full 5 seconds, his voice trembling. This is a green crab? You're kidding me. This thing is bigger than the biggest swimming crab I've ever seen. It really is a green crab. Look at the shell shape, the pincer shape, a standard silicerata. Lin Hai held the Crab King out to old man Li. It's just a bit big. A bit big? Old man Li reached out a hand to touch the shell, his finger visibly trembling when it touched the carapace. A bit big? You call this a bit big? His voice suddenly rose an octave, and he circled around Lin Hai, squatting down to look, standing up to look, then squatting down again. I, Li Jianxing, have been beachcombing for 42 years. Lived 65 years, from mangroves to the open sea. What crabs haven't I seen? Old man Li held up 2 fingers to indicate the width of the carapace, his lips quivering. This size, this weight, the luster of this shell. I dare to stake my lifelong reputation that this thing definitely exceeds 8 gene. 8 gene 4 liang. Lin Hai reported the number with a smile. 8 gene 4 liang. Old man Li plopped down on a rock by the roadside, not even noticing his bamboo basket clattering to the ground. How is this possible? A green crab can grow to 8 gene 4 liang? The biggest I've ever seen. The biggest was just over 2 gene, and that was already called a Crab King by the elders. Yours. He couldn't continue, just staring wide-eyed and panting heavily. Uncle Li, calm down, don't get excited. Lin Hai placed the Crab King on a dry stone surface nearby. Just lucky, I happened upon it. Lucky? Old man Li stood up from the rock, walked up to Lin Hai, and looked him up and down several times. Lucky enough to let you dig out something like this from the mangroves? I've been to that muddy patch no fewer than 50 times when I was young. At most I dug out a few small crabs weighing 3 or 4 liang. And you're telling me you dug out an 8 liang crab king? His gaze then swept to the bucket in Lin Hai's hand, which was densely packed with green crabs, piled high. Are these also from that mangrove forest? Yes, all dug this morning, over 20 of them. Old Man Li leaned in to look at the crabs in the bucket, and his expression changed again. All large crabs over half a gene, and several over 1 gene? When did this mangrove forest have so many good catches? He looked up at Lin Hai, the shock in his eyes turning into confusion, along with something indescribable. Boy, tell me honestly, how did you find these crab holes? I've been beachcombing in this village my whole life, and what you did today is completely beyond my understanding. Lin Hai's mind turned, but his smile remained unchanged. Uncle Li, I can't really explain it either. I just came out early this morning, and I always felt where the crabs were. When I reached in, there they were. Maybe the heavens took pity on my family's misfortune and opened their eyes. This was half true. Old Li stared at him for a long time, then shook his head and sighed. Heaven's blessing. Fine, your family really is due for a change of luck. He crouched down again, looked at the 8 liang king crab, and clicked his tongue twice. Kid, what are you planning to do with this crab? Take it to town and sell it. Lin Hai answered bluntly. Town. Old Li frowned. What good price can those fishmongers in town give you? A king crab of this level, they've never seen one in their lives. They don't know how to price it. If you ask me, you should at least go to a high-end seafood restaurant in the city. For an 8 king crab, they'd offer 10,000 without batting an eye. 10,000. Lin Hai knew the crab's value well, but he needed money urgently and couldn't wait that long. Uncle Li, I don't have connections with city restaurants. I'll check the town first and sell if the price is right. Old Li stood up, patted the dirt off his pants, and said, You stubborn kid. He thought for a moment and added, There's a wholesale shop in town called Sia Seafood. The owner is a young woman who's been in business for years, with a good reputation and fair prices. If you go to town, ask her first. Sia Seafood? Lin Hai noted the name. Old Li took one last look at the king crab, let out a long sigh, shook his head, and headed back toward the village. After walking 7 or 8 steps, he turned back to glance at Lin Hai, muttering to himself, looking like he hadn't woken from a dream. Lin Hai watched Old Li walk away, then looked down at the king crab in his arms and the bucket full of mud crabs. The raw materials for the first pot of gold were ready. Now all that was left was a good price. He hoisted the bucket, hugged the king crab tight, and strode toward the dirt road leading out of the village to town. After a few steps, 3 figures suddenly emerged from the intersection ahead, swaggering toward him. The one in front was burly, with a cigarette dangling from his mouth and a blue dragon tattooed on his neck. Zhao Debiao. Lin Hai slowed his pace, his eyes narrowing slightly. Lin Hai carried the bucket, holding the 8 king crab in his arms, and walked along the muddy path toward the village. The sun had fully risen, and the light on the sea was dazzling, but his mood was even brighter. Just as he reached the old banyan tree at the village entrance, the path ahead was blocked. 3 men stood in a line across the dirt road. In the middle was a sturdy man in his 40s, with a crew cut, a neck thicker than his thigh, a cigarette dangling from his mouth. Arms crossed, tilting his head as he looked over. Zhao Debiao. In Baisha village, everyone was afraid of him. He contracted the small fish market at the village entrance, and everything the village fisherman caught had to go through him. If he said 15 yuan a caddy, you could only take 15. Not enough? Then let it rot at home. Don't even think about shipping a single fish out of his territory. His cousin was a section chief in town, so no one in the village dared to cross him. Lin Hai's steps slowed for a moment, not out of fear, but because memories from his past life flashed through his mind one by one. In that life, it was this same Zhao Debiao who, when Lin Hai was at his lowest, bought his catch at rock-bottom prices, resold it for triple, and never gave him a cent. When Lin Hai argued, Zhao's men cornered him in an alley and beat him up, and he didn't dare call the police. When his mother found out, she couldn't sleep all night. His father sat at the door and smoked half a pack in silence. That pathetic Lin Hai had bowed to Zhao Debiao his whole life. This life? Yo, Lin Hai? Zhao Debiao flicked his cigarette, but to the ground, and walked toward Lin Hai. Out early? I heard you went to the mangroves? Good catch, huh? His eyes landed on the tightly bound king crab in Lin Hai's arms, and his eyes darted around. Whoa, what's that? Such a big crab? Lin Hai stood still. Brother Zhao, something on your mind? Yeah, something. Zhao Debiao smiled, reached out, and patted Lin Hai's shoulder, not lightly. Bro, I just heard from Lu Dazue that you went out foraging today, so I thought I'd check on you. Your family owes Qian Fugue $1 million, right? I was thinking of giving you a hand. The 2 lackeys beside him chimed in. Yeah, Brother Biao has always looked out for your family. Right, it's only right to offer the best stuff to Brother Biao first. Lin Hai didn't respond, waiting for Zhao to get to the point. Zhao didn't beat around the bush either, staring at the bucket of mud crabs. Reached in and stirred. Damn, all big crabs, top quality. How about this? Sell me all these crabs, and I'll give you a fair price. 15 yuan a caddy, a one-time offer, clean and simple, we're square. 15 yuan a caddy. Lin Hai almost laughed out loud. These crabs, even the ordinary ones, would sell for more at the market. Not to mention the premium big crabs in the bucket, each worth 200 or 300. As for the 8 Jean Folion king crab in his arms, people would fight to pay 10,000. Zhao Debiao's offer of 15 a caddy was trying to squeeze every last bit of value out of him. 15? Lin Hai laughed. What, too much? Zhao raised an eyebrow. You're not thinking of asking for 20, are you? Let me tell you, the mud crab market is bad this year. 15 is already out of neighborly kindness. Brother Zhao, I'm not selling these crabs to you. Zhao's smile froze. The two lackeys were stunned too, exchanging glances. What did you say? Zhao tilted his head. I said, not selling. Lin Hai's tone was calm, each word clear. Your price doesn't match my crabs. Zhao's face darkened instantly. He had been domineering in Baisha village for years, and no one had ever said that to his face. Lin Hai, did the sun in the mangroves fry your brain? Zhao stepped forward, standing face to face with Lin Hai, lowering his voice. Get this straight. In this village, if you don't sell your catch to me, you can't sell it to anyone. Your father understood that rule. I don't know if my father understood. Lin Hai looked Zhao in the eye and said word by word, I only know one thing. I'm not taking your offer. The veins on Zhao's temples bulged. Kid, what are you being so tough for? He snorted and reached for the crabs in Lin Hai's bucket. I'm laying it down now. If you don't sell these crabs at my price. Before his hand touched the bucket, Lin Hai sidestepped. He stepped back, tightened his grip on the king crab, and swept his gaze from Zhao's face to the two lackeys. Then back. Brother Zhao, ask your conscience. You buy my crabs at 15 a caddy, then sell them for how much? 60? 80? Zhao was choked up. None of your business what I sell them for. That's my skill. Fine, you've got skill. Lin Hai nodded. Then I've got skill too. I'll find my own place to sell my crabs. No need for you to worry. With that, he walked around Zhao, holding the king crab and carrying the bucket. Zhao turned around, staring at Lin Hai's back, his facial muscles twitching. Lin Hai, stop right there. Lin Hai didn't stop. If you walk out of this village today, don't ever think about making a living in Baisha village again. Zhao raised his voice. Who do you think you are? You're just a poor bum drowning in debt, and you're putting on airs in front of me? Lin Hai stopped. He didn't turn around, just tilted his head slightly, a smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. Brother Zhao, keep the term poor bum for now. You might have to change it soon. With that, he walked away without looking back. Zhao stood there, his chest heaving, unable to speak for a long time. One lackey sidled up. Brother Biao, is this kid crazy? Want us to? No need. Zhao pulled out a new cigarette from his pocket, lit it, and took a deep drag. I want to see who he can sell those crabs to. Every fishmonger in town owes me a favor. If he dares to run away from me today, he'll be begging me to take his goods tomorrow. He didn't believe it. This penniless Lin Hai couldn't possibly stir up any trouble. Lin Hai left the village and walked along the dirt road leading to the town. He walked quickly, the crabs in the bucket clattering loudly. He heard Zhao Debiao's threat, but didn't take a single word to heart. In his previous life, he was intimidated by such threats and spent his whole life stuck in Baisha village, living with someone holding him by the throat. This life, his battlefield wasn't in the village, but in the town, in the city, in the whole sea. A village bully couldn't stop him. Halfway there, Lin Hai spotted a broken bicycle at the door of a house by the roadside. The owner was Old Man Zhang from the neighboring village, feeding chickens in the yard. Lin Hai shouted to him, Uncle Zhang, lend me the bike for a ride. I'll return it this afternoon. Go ahead, that old bike is rusting away anyway. Old Man Zhang waved his hand. Lin Hai tied the crab bucket to the back seat, fastened the king crab to the handlebar crossbar with seaweed vine, got on, and pedaled. The broken bicycle creaked and groaned, but it picked up speed. The town's seafood wholesale market was waiting for him. After 20 minutes of pedaling, Lin Hai arrived in town. The seafood wholesale market was at the east end of town, a row of blue iron sheds lined up along the roadside, with stalls packed tightly inside. The air was thick with a strong fishy smell and the moisture from melting ice. Early morning was the time for stocking up. Various vans and small three-wheelers crowded at the market entrance, with shouts of loading and unloading rising one after another. Lin Hai pushed his bicycle toward the market entrance, his eyes scanning the signs. Xiaya Seafood, the wholesale shop Old Man Li mentioned. He found it quickly, The third shop on the left from the market entrance, with a white sign with blue characters hanging above the door. The glass door was spotlessly clean, and the water tanks inside were neatly arranged, completely different from the messy stalls next to it. At the shop entrance, a young woman was squatting next to a basket of goods, holding a flashlight to examine the swimming crabs inside, talking to a middle-aged supplier. This batch won't do. Too many dead crabs. Look at the quality yourself. The shells are soft. Take them back. Sister Xiaya, this batch is really not bad, just arrived last night. It's hot. Nothing we can do. The heat is your problem, not mine. My acceptance standards are clear. If they're not lively enough, they all go back. No negotiation. Her voice was crisp and clear, without any nonsense. Lin Hai pushed his bike to the door and first looked at this woman. She seemed about 25 or 26, with a high ponytail, a few stray hairs blown to her cheek by the sea breeze. Her skin was quite fair, not like someone who spent all day in a seafood market. She wore a gray-blue work short-sleeve shirt with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows and dark work pants below, with knee-high rubber boots on her feet. She looked clean and neat, squatting among piles of seafood baskets without looking out of place. So this was Qin Xiaoya? Just as Old Manly said, young, good reputation, fair pricing. Lin Hai didn't rush to talk to her. He first leaned against his bike and waited for her to send the supplier away. Qin Xiaoya returned the basket of swimming crabs, stood up, patted the water off her hands, and turned to go into the shop. Just then, her eyes caught the broken bucket on the back of Lin Hai's bicycle. More precisely, the mud crabs inside. She stopped in her tracks. Wait. Qin Xiaoya walked over to Lin Hai, her gaze locked on the bucket. She squatted down in front of it, clicked on her flashlight, and shone it into the bucket. Under the light, the shells of the mud crabs gleamed with a bluish-black luster, every one lively and vigorous, claws waving up and down, each bigger than the last. Qin Xiaoya's eyes narrowed. She reached into the bucket, turned over a few, picked up the largest one, checked its belly, and pressed on the shell, her movements 10 times more careful than when she examined the swimming crabs. Wild. She looked up at Lin Hai. All wild, caught fresh this morning. Lin Hai nodded. Where from? Mangrove forest. Qin Xiaoya put the crab back into the bucket, stood up, and looked Lin Hai up and down. Shorts, vest, flip-flops, smelling of mud. But he spoke neither humbly nor arrogantly, unlike the small fishermen who rushed to sell their goods. Which village are you from? Baisha village, Lin Hai. Baisha village. Qin Xiaoya thought for a moment. Isn't there a Zhao de Biao who collects goods there? Why did you come to town? His price didn't appeal to me. Qin Xiaoya raised an eyebrow. Her mouth twitched, but she said nothing. She squatted down again to check the crabs in the bucket, this time more carefully, turning each one over to check the fullness of the shell. The quality was indeed good, and they were big, with several over a pound. She stood up. How much do you want to sell for? You name the price first. 100 per pound, all sizes accepted. 100. Lin Hai shook his head. Boss Chun, you just returned a basket of swimming crabs, saying they weren't lively enough. Look at these in my bucket. Every one is a lively wild large crab, full of roe as you felt yourself. With this quality, you offer me 100? How is that different from Zhao de Biao? Qin Xiaoya was taken aback by the phrase, how is that different from Zhao de Biao, then laughed. You're quite blunt. Fine, how much do you want? Regular ones 150. Large ones 200, premium grade priced separately. Premium grade? Qin Xiaoya looked at him. You grade them too? Don't you grade them when you buy? Lin Hai pointed at the water tanks in her shop. I saw the labels on your tanks, premium and regular separated, sold at different prices to restaurants and retail customers. Qin Xiaoya's expression changed, and she looked him over again. This mud-covered young fisherman had sharp observation skills. 150 is too high. I'll give you at most 120. 140. 130. 135, no lower. Qin Xiaoya stared at him for 2 seconds, then extended her hand. Deal. Large ones 180, over 1 pound 200. Okay. Lin Hai shook her hand, his palm covered in mud and salt stains. Qin Xiaoya didn't mind, squeezed it, and let go. But you've got more than just these, right? Qin Xiaoya's gaze shifted to the big fellow tied to the bicycle crossbar with seaweed vine. The king crab was bound tightly, its 2 huge claws raised toward the sky. Even tied up, it still looked imposing. Qin Xiaoya walked over, squatted beside the bike, looked for 3 seconds, and said nothing. Then she looked up, her expression completely different from before. How much does this crab weigh? 8 Jean 4 Liang. Qin Xiaoya stood up and took a deep breath. Come inside with me. She turned and walked into the shop, took 2 steps, then looked back at Lin Hai. Don't leave the crabs outside. Bring them all in. Inside Xiaoya Seafood Wholesale, It was even more orderly than it looked from outside. On the left was a row of stainless steel water tanks with oxygen pumps running, bubbles gurgling continuously. On the right were cold storage cabinets and a workbench, with 2 electronic scales on the counter, and a stack of printed receipt forms beside them. Chen Xiaoya pulled down half of the rolling shutter at the shop entrance, blocking the view from passers-by. Put the bucket up here. She patted the workbench surface and went to the corner to get a large plastic tote. Lin Hai placed the broken bucket on the counter, and Chen Xiaoya had already pulled up a small stool beside the electronic scale, put on a pair of thin rubber gloves. I'll weigh them one by one. You watch. Go ahead. Chen Xiaoya reached into the bucket, pulled out the first crab, turned it over to check its belly, and placed it on the scale. For Liang 6, regular quality. At 135 a gene, this one is 6 yuan 2. She tossed the crab into the tote and grabbed the second. 7 Liang 3, not bad. This one is 10 yuan. Third, fourth, fifth. Chen Xiaoya moved very fast. Each crab took no more than 5 seconds in her hands for inspection and weighing, and the numbers she called out were clear. 8 Liang 1, this one's a decent size. 6 Liang even, regular. 9 Liang 5, close to a caddy, priced as large size, 180. Lin Hai stood by watching, not saying a word. This woman was indeed efficient, and her eye was sharp. Among the few crabs, she picked out the 2 best ones as soon as she touched them and set them aside separately. These 2 are the best of your batch. Chen Xiaoya picked up one of them. The shell width was noticeably larger than the others, the carapace bulging roundly. 1 caddy 3 Liang. The crab roe is at least 90% full. For this quality of wild green crab, to be honest with you, I haven't received any in half a year. What's your price? 300. 350. Chen Xiaoya glanced at him, didn't argue. She put the crab into a separate tank. 350 for you. And the other one, 1 caddy 1 Liang, at 300. In just over 10 minutes, all 23 green crabs in the bucket were weighed. Chen Xiaoya picked up a calculator and tapped away, then turned the screen to show Lin Hai. 23 crabs, total weight, 13 caddies, 6 Liang. According to the prices we just discussed, ordinary ones at 135, large ones at 180 to 200, premium ones at 300 and 350. Total, 2,940. Let's round it to 3,000. You're still haggling with me? Chen Xiaoya laughed, but didn't argue. Fine, 3,000. She took out an iron box from the drawer, counted out 3,000 in cash, and slapped it on the counter. Lin Hai didn't rush to take the money. He raised his chin, gesturing toward the door. The big one hasn't been counted yet. Chen Xiaoya paused. She turned her gaze to the door. The 8 caddy 4 Liang king crab was still tied to the crossbar of the bicycle. Through the half-open rolling door, the outline of its 2 giant claws was visible. Bring it in. Lin Hai went out, untied the king crab, carried it into the shop, and placed it on the work table. As soon as the king crab was set down, the entire table was occupied. Its 2 giant claws extended far beyond the edge of the table. Even tied up, the sense of oppression was overwhelming. Chen Xiaoya stood by the table, staring for a full half-minute without speaking. She had been in the seafood business for 7 or 8 years. Counting from her grandfather's generation, her family had been in this trade for 3 generations, and she had seen all kinds of species. But a green crab this big, she had truly never seen before. Did you dig it out of the mangrove forest? Her voice was half a tone lower than before. Yes. How did you find it? Luck. Chen Xiaoya didn't press further. She reached out to touch the shell, her fingertips sliding from the center of the carapace to the edge, feeling the thickness and luster of the shell surface. Then she turned it over to look at the underside and pressed on it. When her finger pressed down, the carapace didn't budge. The roe is packed to the brim. There was a slight tremor in her voice that she hadn't noticed herself. If you steam this crab directly, when you lift the lid, golden crab roe will spill half a plate. So, Boss Chun, give me a price. Chen Xiaoya withdrew her hand, leaned against the freezer, crossed her arms, and looked at Lin Hai for several seconds. This thing has no market reference price, you know? A green crab over 8 caddies. There might not be a second one in the entire province's seafood market. If I took it straight to a chef at a 5-star hotel in the city, he'd slap the table and demand it on the spot. Then name a number. 8,000, 10,000, 9,000, 9,500. Boss Chen, let me do the math for you. Lin Hai raised a finger. If you take this crab to a high-end restaurant in the city, the selling point and hype alone are worth 20,000 in traffic. A table of customers comes for this crab, add drinks and side dishes. What's the average spending per table? You'll easily double your profit in the middle. 9,500, you still think it's expensive? Chen Xiaoya blinked twice. Having been in business for so many years, she had dealt with all kinds of suppliers. She had seen plenty of smooth talkers. But a fisherman in flip-flops, covered in mud, calculating restaurant per table spending and traffic costs, that was a first. You're quite interesting. The corner of her mouth lifted. She walked over to the iron box, counted out another 9,500, stacked it with the previous 3,000, and slapped it in front of Lin Hai. 3,000 plus 9,500, total 12,500. Rounded off, 12,500 it is. This time Lin Hai didn't haggle. He picked up the stack of money, rubbed the edge with his thumb to confirm the count, then folded it and stuffed it into his shorts pocket. A thick wad, bulging, pressing against his thigh. Comfortable. Really comfortable. 12,500. In his previous life at this time, selling crabs under Zhao Debiao, he earned at most 100 or so a day. Now, in one morning, he had made more than half a year's worth from his past life. Chen Xiaoya took a business card from the counter and handed it over. If you have good goods in the future, you can bring them directly here. I buy long term, and as you've seen, my prices won't be lower than others. The card read, Xiaoya Seafood Wholesale, Chen Xiaoya, with a phone number below. Lin Hai took it and put it in his pocket. Boss Chun, the goods in the future will only be better than today's. You'd better prepare your tanks and cash in advance. Quite the bold talk. Chen Xiaoya leaned on the counter, took a sip from her teacup. Today's batch of crabs really opened my eyes. Especially that king crab. But if you say every time will be like this, I'll have to question that. Keep your question mark for now. Lin Hai pulled open the rolling door. Sunlight flooded in, shining on his mud-stained face. Next time I come, you can decide whether to change that question mark into an exclamation mark or a period. He mounted the beat-up bicycle, pedaled twice, and disappeared creakingly into the crowd at the market entrance. Chen Xiaoya stood at the door for a few seconds, lowered her head with a smile, then turned and went back into the shop. Lin Hai rode out of the market, the money in his pocket weighing heavily. The wind blew on his face, salty, carrying the smell of the sea. He squeezed the thickness of the banknotes in his pocket with his right hand. Suddenly, he remembered something. On this day in his previous life, he had sold crabs all day at Zhao Debiao's fish market, squeezed down to 15 yuan per caddy, and ended up with less than 200 yuan. He took that 200 yuan home. His mother took it, counted it twice, said nothing, turned, and went into the kitchen to cut half a winter melon for soup. The family of 3 had a meal with pickled vegetables. At the dinner table, he told his father, "Tomorrow I'll go beachcombing again, catch a bit more." His father put down his chopsticks, looked at him, and said nothing. What was in that look? Disappointment? Heartache? Or helplessness at his son's incompetence? He never wanted to see that look again in this life. Lin Hai pedaled onto the road back to Baisha village, faster and faster. When he reached home, Wang Xiulan was drying salted fish in the yard. Seeing her son covered in mud, riding a beat-up bike borrowed from who knows where, she was startled. "Son, where have you been?" "Gone all morning." "Mom." Lin Hai leaned the bike against the wall, pulled out the stack of money from his pocket, and pressed it into his mother's hand. "Today's earnings, keep it safe." Wang Xiulan looked down at what was in her hand and froze. In her life, she had never held so much money in her hand. "This, how much is this?" 12,500. 12,000. Wang Xiulan's lips trembled, her hands began to shake. "You, where did you get so much money?" "Earned from beachcombing, honest hard work." Lin Hai smiled, patted the back of his mother's hand. "Mom, keep it safe first. This is just the beginning." Wang Xiulan clutched the money, her eyes reddening, mumbling, this child. Unable to form a complete sentence for a long time. Lin Hai didn't stay long. He went into his room and closed the door. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he closed his eyes. The system panel in his mind lit up automatically. A new message was flashing at the top. Ding. Today's fishing coordinates refreshed. Coordinates, southeast of Fisherman's Bay, Black Reef Waters. Main catch, tiger grouper, quality, good to premium. Tip, the waters are dense with reefs, underwater currents are complex, but fish density is extremely high. It is recommended that the host obtain basic fishing tools as soon as possible and proceed to the location. Tiger grouper. Lin Hai's eyes lit up immediately. Tiger grouper, scientific name Epinephelus fuscogitatus. Market price ranges from a few hundred to a few thousand yuan per caddy, with premium ones selling for tens of thousands. The system rated it as good to premium and said fish density is extremely high. If he could catch a net of these, today's 12,500 would be just a fraction. But the problem was that tiger groupers inhabit reef waters, and manual beachcombing couldn't catch them. You need a boat, fishing gear, at least the basic equipment. He has nothing right now. The boat is gone, the family savings are cleaned out, and with today's income, he barely has just over 10,000. Buy a boat. Can't even afford a second-hand sampan. He'll figure out the tools tomorrow. Lin Hai stared at the flashing new coordinates on the system panel, the corners of his mouth slowly curling up. First, plug the first interest payment to Qian Fugui, then free up his hands for the big move. His gaze passed over the system panel and landed on the sea outside the window, dyed red by the setting sun. Tiger grouper, black reef, a full hold of fish. Wait for me. Lin Hai pedaled his broken bicycle from Baisha village to the town in less than 20 minutes. Qian Fugui's base was in an old alley in the town center. The door bore the gilded characters Fugui Tea House, and the interior was decently decorated, with mahogany tables and chairs. A few calligraphy and paintings of unknown authenticity on the walls, and the air conditioner humming loudly. Called a tea house, it was actually a loan shark den. Lin Hai parked his bike at the door and pushed it open. The tea house was filled with smoke. Qian Fugui was sitting cross-legged in the main seat brewing gongfu tea, flanked by the two yellow-haired thugs who had come to his door yesterday. One scrolling on his phone, the other eating sunflower seeds. Yo! The sunflower seed eater spotted Lin Hai first and patted Qian Fugui's arm. Gui gu, that Lin kid is here. Qian Fugui looked up, saw Lin Hai standing at the door covered in mud, and raised an eyebrow. Isn't this young Master Lin? What? Had a change of heart. Come to beg for an extension? Lin Hai walked up to the tea table, didn't sit, pulled a stack of cash from his pocket, counted out 30 bills, and neatly slapped them on the table. 3,000, first installment of interest. Count it. The whole tea house went silent for a second. Qian Fugui stared at the stack of money on the table, didn't reach for it, but first looked up at Lin Hai. What did you say? First installment of interest, 3,000. Lin Hai withdrew his hand and stuck it in his pocket. Didn't you say if I couldn't pay in 3 days, it would double? Today is only the second day. I'm paying you in advance. Qian Fugui slowly put down his teacup, leaned forward, stared at the stack of money for several seconds, then reached out, picked it up, ran his thumb over the edges, and counted them one by one. 30 bills, not one more, not one less. Where did you get the money? He clutched the money in his hand and squinted. Earned it from beachcombing. Beachcombing. Qian Fugui laughed, his laughter full of disbelief. You, a pauper who doesn't even have a boat, can earn 3,000 from beachcombing? Do you think I'm stupid? Did you borrow from someone else again? Let me tell you, Lin Hai, if you borrow outside money to plug my hole, you'll end up unable to pay both sides and die even uglier. None of your business where I got it. Lin Hai looked at him, his tone flat. The money is in your hands. You can feel whether it's real or fake yourself. This installment of interest is cleared. Can you mark it in your ledger now? Qian Fugui was choked. He did have a ledger, recording every loan and interest clearly. Lin Hai owed 1 million, and according to his compound interest calculation, the interest alone was 3,000 a month, with the principal untouched. In his previous life, Lin Hai couldn't even scrape together that 3,000 and always knelt begging for extensions. But now this Lin Hai slapped the table and threw down the money, not a trace of panic on his face. Qian Fugui stuffed the money into a drawer, picked up his teacup, took a sip, and put on a nonchalant air. Fine, consider this month's interest paid. But I advise you not to get too cocky. You struggled so hard for 3,000 in interest, and there's still 970,000 in principal. Take your time paying back. I'm not in a hurry. You really don't need to be. Lin Hai turned and walked toward the door. Stop right there. Qian Fugui called out from behind. Lin Hai stopped, but didn't turn around. Lin Hai, you've got some nerve now, huh? Talking to me like that. Boss Qian, I have only one attitude. Lin Hai turned his head slightly. I will pay back every cent I owe you. But if you ever lay a finger on my parents again, I won't pay back the money, and we'll meet in court. Qian Fugui's face immediately darkened. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Lin Hai pushed open the door and left, the glass door of the tea house swinging behind him. Qian Fugui stared at the door for a long while, then slammed his teacup heavily on the table. The yellow-haired thug beside him leaned in. Gui gu, that kid seems like a different person. Should we? No need. Qian Fugui waved his hand and leaned back in his chair. He owes me 1 million. The monk may run away, but the temple can't. Let him bounce around for a couple of days. I'll see how long he can keep it up. Lin Hai rode his bike back to Baisha village and entered his home. Wang Xiulan was washing clothes in the yard. Seeing her son return, she quickly stood up, not even rinsing the soap bubbles off her hands. Son, where did you go? You left early this morning without saying a word. Mom, I went to town and paid Qian Fugui this month's interest. Wang Xiulan's clothes fell into the basin. You paid it? 3,000, not a cent less. Really paid. Wang Xiulan's voice changed. She ran to Lin Hai, grabbed his arm, and looked him up and down. He didn't give you a hard time, did he? Didn't lay a hand on you? He wouldn't dare. Lin Hai smiled. Mom, he's just a money collector. Once he gets the money, he's more obedient than anyone. Wang Xiaolan's eyes reddened again, her lips trembling, and she slapped Lin Hai on the shoulder. You kid, you can't spend money like that even if you have it. You gave me over 10,000 yesterday, and today you paid another 3,000. What's left? Mom, what's left is enough. Lin Hai pulled his mother to sit on the doorstep. I'm telling you, with this month's interest paid, Qian Fugue won't come making trouble for at least 30 days. In these 30 days, I can earn 10 times that, or more. 10 times? What are you bragging about? Just wait and see. Wang Xiaolan looked at the confidence on her son's face, wanted to say something more, but finally just sighed, bent down, picked up the clothes in the basin, and continued scrubbing, muttering, just like your father, all talk. Lin Dashan had come out of the house at some point, standing by the doorframe, glancing at Lin Hai. How much did you pay? 3,000, interest. Lin Dashan didn't ask further, nodded, and turned back into the house. That nod was very light, but Lin Hai saw it. In his previous life, his father had never nodded at him. Every time he said he was going to earn money to pay off debts, his father's reaction was silence or a sigh. Today he nodded. That was worth more than anything. Lin Hai returned to his room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. The system panel in his mind automatically appeared, with the new message at the top still flashing. He had seen this coordinate refresh prompt last night, but it was already dark, so he couldn't act. Now, he read the information carefully again. Ding. Today's catch coordinates have been refreshed. Coordinates, southeast of Fisherman's Bay, Black Reef Sea area. Main catch, tiger grouper, quality, good to premium. Fish density, high density gathering. Special note, this sea area is full of reefs, with complex underwater currents, suitable for rock fishing. It is recommended that the host equip a carbon fiber rock fishing rod, large live bait, and high-strength fishing line. Tiger grouper. Lin Hai's fingers clutched the bedsheet. In his previous life, he had beachcombed in Baisha village for a few years and knew what level of fish tiger grouper was. Brown-spotted grouper, tender and firm flesh, few bones, delicious, a signature dish in all high-end restaurants. Ordinary quality sells for 200 to 300 per caddy. Premium quality, 600 to 700 per caddy, and restaurants scramble to buy. If it's top grade, it starts at 4 digits, with no upper limit. The system rated it good to premium and said the fish density was high. If he could catch a batch, it wouldn't be just a few thousand. It would be tens of thousands, or even over 100,000. But the system prompt made it clear. This sea area requires rock fishing gear, carbon fiber rod, high-strength line, live bait, and preservation tools like buckets and coolers. He now had just over 9,000 left. Enough. Lin Hai stood up, pushed open the window, and looked at the sky. It was afternoon. The town's fishing tackle shop was still open. He was going to spend some money. Not spend it, invest it. Spend 5,000 on gear, go to Fisherman's Bay tomorrow for a big haul, and the income when he returns will multiply tenfold. He had calculated it clearly. Lin Hai pulled out a plastic bag from under the bed, counted the remaining money, tucked it away, and pushed open the door. Mom, I'm going to town. To buy some stuff. I'll be back before dinner. Going to town again? How many trips are you making today? Last trip, I'll be back after buying. Lin Hai hopped onto his beat-up bicycle and pedaled toward town. The wind rushed into his short sleeves, puffing them up like a balloon. He squinted toward the distant sea, where Fisherman's Cove lay beyond several hills, with faint outlines of black reef rocks along the coastline. Just wait, tiger grouper. Tomorrow morning, your new owner will arrive. The only decent fishing tackle shop in town, called Old Woo's Fishing Gear, was located at the corner of the back street of the market. Outside stood several large plastic buckets and a row of iron racks hung with fishing rods. Lin Hai parked his bike at the door and pushed it open. The shop wasn't big, but it was packed full. Fishing rods of various lengths hung on the walls, reels and hook sets of different models were displayed in the counter, and several boxes of sinkers and floats were piled in the corner. Behind the counter sat a chubby old man in his 50s, wearing reading glasses and trimming a fishing line knot with small scissors. This was Old Woo, who had been selling fishing gear in town for over 20 years, known by all the fishermen in the surrounding villages. Old Woo heard the door and looked up, recognizing Lin Hai. Oh, the Lin kid from Baisha village. Long time no see. Uncle Woo, I'm here to buy some gear. What do you need? Old Woo put down the scissors and stood up from behind the counter. A rock fishing rod, carbon fiber, stiff action, 5.3 meters. Old Woo was taken aback. You want a rock fishing rod? Haven't you always been beachcombing on the mudflats? When did you switch to fishing? Just want to try something different. Lin Hai walked over to the wall of fishing rods, scanning from top to bottom, then reached out and touched a silver gray rod. How much is this one? This one? 380. Old Wu came over. Carbon fiber content 90%. Stiff action, suitable for medium to large fish. Good eye. But if you're just fishing from the shore, you don't need to spend this much. I have one for over 100. No need. Lin Hai took the rod down, weighed it in his hand, gave it a couple of shakes to feel the elasticity and backbone, then shook his head and hung it back. This one lacks backbone. It claims 90% carbon fiber, but it's at most 75. Old Wu pushed up his reading glasses. You can tell the carbon fiber content by touch. Uncle Wu, let me see that black one, top row, third from the left. Old Wu stood on a stool to reach the rod and handed it to him. Lin Hai took it, slid his fingers from the handle to the tip, nodded, then shook the rod, swung his arm, and retracted it in one smooth motion. This one works. The rod is stiff enough, with good backbone. It can handle fish over 3 gene. How much? This one is more expensive, 520. 500 deal? You kid, you're quick to haggle. Fine, 500 it is. I also need a reel. A 3000 size spinning reel, corrosion resistant. Old Wu took 2 out from the counter, 1 domestic and 1 imported. Lin Hai picked up the domestic one, turned the handle a couple of times, listened to the gear sound, and put it down. Then he picked up the imported one, did the same, and nodded. This one how much? 600. Also, give me 200 meters of number 3 main line, 50 meters of number 2 fluorocarbon leader, 20 large tube hooks, streamlined sinkers, 10 each of 30G and 50G. No floats, I'm bottom fishing. Old Wu placed each item on the counter, his mouth opening wider. This set isn't cheap. Are you sure you want all of it? Not done yet. Lin Hai turned to the corner of the shop, picked up a 20-liter hardshell insulated cooler, and tapped the wall. What material is this? PP reinforced, keeps cold for 12 hours. Give me one. Also 2 pairs of cut-resistant gloves, a waterproof headlamp, and 2 aerated bait boxes with oxygen pumps. By the time Old Wu had everything on the counter, it was almost overflowing. Lin Hai, in my 20 years of selling fishing gear, you're the first person to walk in wearing flip-flops and buy a full set of professional rock fishing gear in one go. Where exactly are you going? Fisherman's Cove, to try my luck. Old Wu's hand stopped. He looked up at Lin Hai, took off his reading glasses, wiped them with his shirt, and put them back on. Fisherman's Cove? You mean the Black Reef in the southeast? Yes. Kid, I advise you not to go there. Old Wu shook his head, his expression genuinely dissuasive. The fish there were mostly caught 3 or 4 years ago. 2 years ago, a few outsiders went rock fishing there and spent the whole day without catching even a few small fish, let alone tiger grouper. Those reefs are slippery and steep, and the waves are big when the tide comes in. You'll not only waste your time, but also risk getting hurt. Uncle Wu, thanks for the warning. Lin Hai opened the bait box to check the battery compartment of the oxygen pump, confirmed it was fine, and closed the lid. But I have a habit. I won't feel at ease until I see it for myself. You kid, as stubborn as your father. Old Wu sighed and started entering prices on the cash register. Rod 500, reel 600, main line and leader together 200, hooks and sinkers 100, cooler 300, gloves, headlamp, and bait boxes together 300. Total 2,000, but I'll knock off the change for an old customer, 1,900. Lin Hai took out his money, counted out 19 bills, and handed them over. Old Wu took the money and glanced at Lin Hai again. You're really willing to invest. If you come back empty-handed, it'll sting for a while. I won't come back empty-handed. You sound as confident as when you picked that rod. All right, pack your stuff yourself. The bags are over there. Lin Hai sorted and packed the gear, the rod into a rod case, the reel and hooks into a tool box, gloves and headlamp into the cooler, and the bait box hung separately on the bike handlebars. The whole beat-up bike looked like a mobile warehouse. Uncle Wu, I'm off. Next time I'll bring you a good fish. Yeah, don't brag. Catch the fish first. Lin Hai rode out of the shop and turned onto the road back to Baisha village. The sun was already slanting westward, and the light on the sea had turned orange-red, spreading in strips across the water. He pedaled, already running through tomorrow's plan in his mind. Depart at 4 a.m., walk along the coastline to the southeast corner of Fisherman's Cove, about 40 minutes. Set up the fishing spot before dawn, cast a line during the window before high tide. Tiger grouper are predators in reef areas, feeding actively in the early morning and evening. Once the live bait hits the water, if the fish are as dense as the system says, there should be action soon. The key is live bait. Tiger grouper love live shrimp and small fish. I'll stop by the town fish market tomorrow morning to buy a bucket of live sea shrimp. By the time he got home, it was almost dark. Lin Hai moved all the gear into his room and checked each piece. He took out the rod to test the feel, spooled the line onto the reel to test the smoothness of casting and retrieving, checked each hook for sharpness, sorted the sinkers by weight, and placed 2 ice packs in the cooler in advance. Everything was ready. He sat on the edge of the bed and called up the system panel in his mind. The red dot marking Fisherman's Cove was still steadily flashing, and the information hadn't changed a single word. Location: southeast of Fisherman's Cove, Black Reef waters. Main catch: tiger grouper, quality, excellent to premium. Fish density: high density gathering, high density gathering. Lin Hai clenched his fist and closed the system panel. Outside the window, the sea was completely dark, with only the lighthouse light flashing in the distance. He lay down on the bed and set the alarm for 3:30 a.m. Tomorrow, Fisherman's Cove, tiger grouper. Old Wu said it's been fished out, and the villagers think nothing good comes from those waters. You don't believe me? That's fine. Lin Hai closed his eyes, a slight smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Tomorrow, I'll let the fish do the talking.